think some of the appeal about the Lowrider ST is that it feels very complete coming from the factory. Like, you don't really want to change the bones of the bike. And, you know, the wheels look good, the wheelbase is good, the suspension's pretty damn good out of the box. It even has risers and moto bars already set up from the factory. It really just needs a seat, a pipe, comfortable bars, maybe a taller windshield. And I also find it odd, I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but a lot of people will take the Lowrider ST and put mini floorboards on it, and then you get the performance bagger guys that take the floorboards off and put mid pegs on it, which I always found to be kind of funny. Ironic, maybe? I don't know. But the Heritage is kind of like a slightly smaller Road King, and I don't see nearly as many people doing to the Heritage what people have done to Road Kings over the years. And maybe that's a touring chassis thing, maybe it's a softail chassis thing, and I think it's definitely a style thing. So I would probably want to do more aftermarket work to a Heritage than I would to a Lowrider ST. But I do think there's a lot of value in having fun with a build like that. So if money were no object and I could just take a bike and build it out, the Heritage would probably be one of my top bikes. I wouldn't pick a Pan America because the Pan America feels so complete as it is. I'm going to throw luggage on it, maybe some taller risers, maybe a different seat, and I'm good to go. Same thing with the Lowrider ST. It doesn't really need that much. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'll kind of reference the thing where once the market gets oversaturated with one thing, we kind of start to, or at least I do, I kind of start to look in another direction. I'm like, hey, what else could be done? And what else could be used as a platform to start to build something? Now with the new 2025s, the Heritage is in a little bit of a weird spot. So it's what's called the classic M8, which is the least powerful of the three. But an M8 as a 117, there's no weak M8, even if it's the weakest of the three out of that bunch. And it's kind of odd. You wouldn't think that a 2-in-1 would go on a Heritage, but it actually works. It looks pretty good. And what I would love to do to that thing is make it a performance club style bagger. I'd want to put leather pros on it. I would keep the windshield. I'd put a big LP6 on the front. I would want the outer laced wheel from the Street Bob on the Heritage, so you get a 19 on the front there, kind of fill out that front fender as opposed to the 16. Obviously a beautiful seat and bars, and maybe swap out the gauge so I could put a gauge up on the bars and put a nice clean finished dash on the tank. And maybe it's just me, but the first Harley that I put miles on was my friend Rocco's Harley, and it was an FLD, a switchback, a 103 twin cam switchback, and I borrowed it for the weekend. He was just like, yeah man, take it out. I think I had some car show for my son Lucas. It was at the school and it was in the parking lot. I had a Jeep Wrangler that was built out, but that happened to be in the shop at the time, so I was like, oh, let me grab a bike. My bike at the time was nothing to take to a show, and so I borrowed a Harley. And at the time I knew nothing about Harleys, and I didn't know what I was riding. I didn't know one model from the next, and it wasn't until later that I found out that it was an FLD. It was a switchback, and it had that FL front end. And this bike is a little bit of an anomaly. It's a Dyna. It's on a mid-size chassis, but it has the smaller bags, and it had full fenders, and I really liked that look. And I started to kind of copy that look with a Kawasaki Cruiser that I had, and I started to try to make it look like Rocco's bike because the bike blew me away, and I just had so much fun on it riding that weekend. And being an FXR owner, the Lowrider and the Lowrider ST very much remind me of the FXRs. And that kind of takes me back to that thing where I feel like FXRs don't really need that much done to them. My FXR has a teardrop air cleaner, a 2-in-1 Bassani, and some T-bars and a different seat. Like that's all that bike needs. It doesn't really need much in order to make it look kind of, you know, modern or sexy or what's in style right now. The Heritage, I think, would take a little bit more work. And I think maybe that's why maybe people aren't seeing that. When you look at the Heritage, maybe you aren't seeing the finished product of what a potential performance mini bagger could look like. But every time I look at it on the showroom floor, the Heritage just sit right next to my desk. They're right to the left of me at the shop, and I stare at them all day long. And I'm looking at that new outer lace 16 front wheel, and then to the right of me is the 2025 Street Bob, and that has the outer laced wheel in the front. And I see that 19, I'm just like, I want the 19 on the Heritage. and then I want to build it out like a performance cruiser. I think at face value, if I'm just looking at the bikes and I'm looking at the specs on the bikes and just taking them for what they look like in the catalog or on the website, I would gravitate more to the Lowrider ST. But once I've ridden them, and I have ridden them both quite a bit over the last few years, the Heritage is just a more comfortable bike to me. I find that seating position to be wonderful, and on the FLI, we had the Icons Hydroglide that was on the Heritage platform. That seat really blew me away, and it made me really appreciate where the floorboards are and how the ergonomics are set up on that bike. So I think if you could look at a bagger and you can say, hey, I want to make this a more performance-oriented machine. So you want to upgrade the suspension, you want to increase the lean angle, you want to improve the handling of it and make the bike faster. I think the Heritage for me is the closest version of the same thing without being on the touring chassis. And there's a lot of guys who just don't want to be on the touring chassis. And I think at least in my demographic, you don't see a lot of people gravitating towards the Heritage with that thought in mind. But you guys know that I talk about this. I talk about where everything is going and how saturated a certain market can get. And then I'm starting to look for, okay, well, what's coming after that? What's going to be the new trend? Because people are going to start to want to go away from what is popular and go away from what the trend is. And I kind of think that the Heritage sits right in that sweet spot. Bro, that seat is comfy.
Is it?
Like the ergonomics on it is just like, your legs are longer than mine, but dude, I could sit on that bike forever. Everybody's always asking if the Lowrider ST is like comfortable enough for touring. Like, bro, this is the sleeper. That seat is gnarly, dude. I love this thing.
I wasn't expecting that, but hey.
Yeah, you guys need to test ride Heritages more, because stop sleeping on the Heritage, you know? If anybody wants to give me an unlimited budget to build out a Heritage, just let me know, because I'd be happy to do that. Until then, I'm just going to kind of look at the bike and think of what I would want to do as like a dream build if money were no option. And I still think that the Lowrider ST and the Road Glide right now are the most complete out of the box motorcycles coming out of the factory. And don't get me wrong, I still love the Lowrider ST. It's one of my favorite bikes in the lineup. I really enjoy riding it. I guess I just don't think that I have to convince anyone else to see why the Lowrider ST is such a wonderful bike. But I think a whole lot less people are looking at the Heritage and thinking like, wow, that's a really good platform to start building my dream bike on. I think it fills a unique niche within the lineup because there are a lot of guys who don't want to go on a touring chassis, but they're too tall for the mids on the Lowrider S or the Lowrider ST or the Street Bob. The Heritage seems like it's that one-off bike where it can do everything really, really well. It's just when you first look at it, if that's not the look you're going for, you don't really see anything else. You just see kind of like this old school looking 40s, 50s style bike. So all my Heritage lovers and riders, let me know in the comments if you guys have built out a performance Heritage. I would love to see it. I would love to see, you know, all these cool builders start to do this because I think the Heritage is kind of a forgotten platform and I haven't seen a whole lot of people building out really cool ones. But yeah, if you told me, hey, you need to do something different, you need to do something that no one else is doing, I would definitely start with the Heritage because we've done everything there can be done to a Street Bob to basically turn it into a Lowrider S. We've done everything to a Lowrider S to basically turn it into a Lowrider ST. And the ST is a very complete bike that doesn't really need much. But I think the Heritage with a really tasteful makeover would be a beautiful bike and would be a joy to ride as well. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I didn't get too much traction on that podcast idea, but I do have some other podcast ideas that I'm going to start fleshing out. And I have some guests in mind that we're going to talk about a few different things that may not necessarily be 100% motorcycle related, but these are things that I take interest in and I'm hoping you guys will as well. And as you can see, I have updated the lighting. I'm very fortunate to have wonderful friends. My friend Mike Vicencio came down and brought a bunch of lights and lit up the whole room. So if you're watching, Mike, thank you very much. I really appreciate you. And if you guys are watching, go show some love to my friend Mike. I'm going to put all of his links down below. He's an amazing photographer. He's been working in the film industry for half his life. And he's really good at what he does. And he's just a really good dude. But that's it for this one, guys. We'll see you on the next one.